5 out of 8 cheese brands sitting in your Woolworths or Kohl's fridge right now contain ingredients that have no business being anywhere near real cheese. And the one sitting in your shopping trolley at this exact moment could be one of them. Here's what makes this infuriating. Australia is one of the greatest dairy nations on the planet. We have some of the best pasture-fed cows in the world. We have the land, the climate, the farming tradition, and the milk to produce genuinely world-class cheese. And yet, the stuff being packaged up under trusted Australian brand names and sold to millions of families every week is in many cases engineered dairy, product loaded with emulsifying salts, artificial colors, natamycin, a pharmaceutical antifungal agent sprayed directly onto your cheese to stop mold from growing, and preservatives that have been quietly slipping into your cheese for years. We're talking about processed cheese slices with so little actual cheese in them that manufacturers technically call them cheese food instead of cheese. We're talking about budget blocks sold with images of rolling green paddocks and happy cows on the label, while the ingredients panel tells a completely different story. Real cheese, actual traditionally made cheese, contains milk, cultures, sometimes salt. That's it. 5 brands that betray Australian dairy. 3 that are actually worth your money. Let's expose them. Number 5, Kraft Singles. Kraft Singles are not cheese. They are legally classified in Australia as a processed cheese product, a category that exists specifically because the product doesn't meet the definition of actual cheese. The minimum cheese content under SANS can be as low as 51%. The rest is water, emulsifying salts like sodium phosphate, milk solids, whey powder, and preservatives. Sodium phosphate keeps fats and proteins from separating when cheese is melted and reformed. Real cheese melts unevenly because it's real. Processed cheese melts perfectly every time because it's engineered to do so. That's not a feature of quality, that's a feature of manufacturing. A single Kraft single slice contains around 310 milligrams of sodium, roughly 13% of an adult's recommended daily intake in one thin slice marketed as a lunchbox staple for children. SANS dietary guidelines recommend children between 4 and 8 years old consume no more than 200 milligrams of sodium per day. 2 slices of Kraft singles gets you more than halfway there, and that's before the bread and ham and the rest of the lunch. Kraft knows their core market is parents who want quick, easy, child-friendly food. The marketing is all primary colors and happy images, implying you're doing something good for your child. Meanwhile, the ingredients panel tells a very different story. Number 4, Coles brand Colby cheese. Own brand cheese from major supermarkets exists for one reason only, margin. When Coles creates a house brand version of a product, they're not trying to make the best version. They're trying to make the cheapest version they can sell at the highest price while still being obviously cheaper than the name brand sitting next to it. Coles Colby and similar house brand blocks contain natamycin, listed as preservative 235. Natamycin is a naturally derived antifungal agent from a soil bacterium, but naturally derived does not mean inert. It's widely used as a pharmaceutical treatment for eye infections and skin conditions. In the food industry, it's applied to the surface of cheese to extend shelf life by killing mold spores. SANS has approved natamycin for use in cheese in Australia. It is legal, but the fact that something is legally permitted doesn't mean you'd choose it if you knew it was there. The overwhelming majority of Australians buying Coles House brand cheese have no idea they're buying a product with an antifungal pharmaceutical agent applied to it. The label says natamycin in small text at the end of the ingredients panel. Most shoppers never read that far. The other issue is what house brand pricing does to dairy farmers. When Coles drives supplier costs down to hit a private label price point, farmers absorb the cut. Dairy Australia has flagged that Farmgate milk prices have not kept pace with production costs, and major retailers' power over supplier contracts is a key driver of that gap. Number 3, Mainland Tasty Cheese. Mainland is a New Zealand brand owned by Fonterra, the massive New Zealand dairy cooperative. Mainland is positioned as a premium quality option. The advertising has long been built around careful cheesemaking, expert cheesemakers, slow and patient processes. The cheese is worth waiting for. Here's what Mainland Tasty Cheese actually contains. Natamycin listed as a preservative on the ingredients panel. More significantly, Mainland's cheese is not Australian. It's made in New Zealand, which is not inherently a problem. New Zealand makes excellent dairy products, but Mainland's marketing in the Australian context is carefully designed to avoid highlighting this. The brand feels local. The shops it's sold in are Australian. The price point is premium. Many Australian consumers assume they're buying Australian cheese. They are not. When the product is also more expensive than comparable Australian-made options and contains the same antifungal preservative as budget house brands, the premium price is exposed as largely a branding exercise. The mass-market tasty blocks sitting in Coles and Woolworths at premium price points with natamycin in the ingredients are not delivering on the brand promise. Number 2, Perfect Italiano Parmesan Shredded. Perfect Italiano is the dominant brand in Australia's shredded and grated cheese category. The branding is all Italian flags and woodfire imagery suggesting authentic European cheese culture. The reality is different. Perfect Italiano shredded Parmesan contains natamycin and powdered cellulose, processed wood pulp classified as a dietary fiber. It's in shredded cheese to stop shreds from clumping together. That's a real problem that needs solving, but the solution being used is coating your cheese in wood pulp. The amount is generally considered small enough to pose no health risk. But here's the practical impact that matters. Powdered cellulose doesn't melt. If you use pre-shredded Parmesan on a pizza or pasta, you won't get the same melt quality you'd get from freshly grated Parmesan from a block. The cellulose coating interferes with heat distribution. The perfect cheese melt you see in Perfect Italiano's own advertisings is literally impossible to achieve with their pre-shredded product. You need to grate it yourself from a block. This is a brand selling you authentic Italian cheese craftsmanship, while the product contains wood pulp and pharmaceutical antifungal agents. Number 1, President Brie and Camembert. President is a French brand owned by Lactalis, the largest dairy company in the world by revenue. On paper, a French company making Brie and Camembert sounds exactly like what you'd want. France is where these cheeses were invented. The traditions are French, the names are protected designations of origin in Europe, but President Brie and Camembert sold in Australia is not made in France. It is manufactured here at a scale that has nothing to do with artisan French tradition. The ingredients panel includes natamycin, and the texture reflects a production process built for shelf life consistency rather than ripening complexity. Real Brie and Camembert are living cheeses that ripen from the outside and via mold culture. A properly ripe Camembert is almost liquid in the center at room temperature. The rind has bite, the flavor is complex and pungent. What President sells in Australian supermarkets is a pasteurized, additive, stabilized approximation. Natamycin is applied to control rind development, so the cheese looks consistent throughout its extended shelf life without the rind becoming too active. The flavor profile is mild, uniform, and deliberately inoffensive, engineered to appeal to the broadest audience rather than express genuine character. The interior texture is rubbery and uniform rather than showing the progressive softening that real Camembert develops. And this is the most important part. The price. President sits at the premium end of the supermarket soft cheese shelf. You're paying for a product engineered away from the very qualities that make this category worth buying. The French name and red and gold branding are doing a job. The product inside the box is not. Lactalis has worked out that Australians will pay for the perception of French cheese heritage without requiring the product to reflect it. Everything you've seen so far represents what's wrong with Australian cheese brands. Corporate engineering, pharmaceutical antifungals, wood pulp, and deliberately inoffensive flavor. But 3 producers break the pattern entirely. These are the cheeses that actually deserve your kitchen. Number 3, Bega Old Favorites Vintage Cheddar Block. Yes, Bega appears on both lists, and that tells you something important. Bega makes different products at very different quality levels under the same brand. Their snack range is not the same quality standard as their aged block range. The Bega Old Favorites Vintage Cheddar is genuinely aged, genuinely flavorful. When you check the ingredients on the plain block, the ingredients panel reads the way cheese should read. Milk, salt, cultures, rennet, sometimes natural colors. That's the whole list. Bega has been making cheese in the Bega Valley on the New South Wales South Coast since 1899. Their aged cheddar range represents that heritage. The vintage block has proper depth of flavor you only get from genuine aging. It's not cheap, around $10 to $12 for a 250-gram block. But you're buying real cheese made by an Australian cooperative from Australian milk aged to develop actual flavor without emulsifiers, without pharmaceutical antifungals, without wood pulp. That's worth the extra cost. Bega is genuinely Australian-owned and Australian-made. The milk comes from farms in the Bega Valley and surrounding regions. Number 2, Utter Delights South Australian Artisan Cheese. Utter Delights operates out of the Barossa Valley in Hondorf in South Australia and represents what Australian cheese actually can be when made by people who care about craft rather than margin. Their range covers soft cheeses, aged cheeses, washed rind styles using milk from local South Australian farms. The ingredients are exactly what real cheese should contain. Pasteurized milk cultures, salt, rennet, and for complex styles, the specific molds or bacterial cultures that give those cheeses their character. No emulsifying salts, no natamycin, no anti-caking agents, no artificial color, just the chemistry of actual cheese applied by people who understand what they're doing. The price is higher than supermarket cheese, and that's appropriate. Good cheese by skilled artisans from quality milk is more expensive than engineered cheese assembled from cheap dairy components. But the per-serve cost difference between Utter Delights and a mid-range supermarket block is much smaller than expected. A smaller amount of genuinely good well-aged cheese delivers far more flavor per gram than a larger amount of mild additive-laden supermarket cheese. Utter Delights is stocked at selected independent grocers and Harris Farm markets in New South Wales and directly through their online store. Number 1. Berries Creek Gourmet Cheese. Berries Creek operates out of South Gippsland in Victoria, one of Australia's genuinely great dairying regions. The terrain, rainfall, and cool maritime climate produce exceptional pasture-fed milk. Berries Creek uses that milk to make cheese at a standard that competes with anything coming out of Europe. Their most recognized product is Tarwin Blue, a washed rind blue cheese that has won multiple awards at the Australian Grand Dairy Awards and is widely regarded as one of the finest blue cheeses produced anywhere in the Southern Hemisphere. What Berries Creek represents is more important than any single award. They are an independent Australian artisan producer making complex, properly fermented, properly aged cheese from local Victorian milk without additives, without preservatives, without the corporate cost cutting that defines every brand on the bad list. The ingredients are exactly what they should be. Pasteurized milk, salt, cultures, rennet, and for blue varieties, the Penicillium roqueforti culture that creates distinctive blue veining, nothing else. Milk provenance is traceable. The cheesemakers are named. The aging is done properly because Berries Creek doesn't operate under shelf life pressures that a Coles or Woolworths supply contract imposes. They age their cheese until those cheeses are ready. That's a luxury commercial producers have engineered out entirely. Berries Creek cheeses are stocked at specialty cheese retailers across Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland, and through Harris Farm markets. They are not a supermarket product. That's not a limitation. It's a quality indicator.